Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a closer look at Micron Technology. They're a huge player in memory and storage.
Absolutely. A real giant.
And we're focusing on your latest numbers, the Q3 2025 performance they just announced.
That's the plan.
Okay, so our mission here really is to cut through all the dense financial stuff, the industry jargon, and pull out what really matters for you. We want to show how a company like Micron, which is so central to, well, everything digital, isn't just keeping up. They're actually helping shape what's next in tech, especially with AI booming.
It's a pivotal time for them, no doubt.
Exactly. So whether you're maybe prepping for a meeting, or you're just curious about the whole chip market situation, or maybe you just want some good points for your next dinner conversation, this deep dive should be perfect for you. All right, let's get into it. Micron just dropped their Q3 earnings for 2025. What were the big numbers? And how did the market take it? Because it sounds like it was a good report.
Well, yeah, the core numbers were actually exceptionally strong. Earnings per share came in at $1.91. That blew past the forecast of $1.59.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's like a 20% surprise. Pretty significant.
Yeah.
And revenue was strong too, $9.3 billion. That also beat the expected $8.84 billion.
So solid beats on both.
Solid beats. And here's the key thing to grasp this, was record quarterly revenue for Micron. They literally hit a new peak.
A record quarter. Okay, that's fascinating then, because despite these, like you said, really impressive record-breaking results, the stock actually dipped a bit. What's the story there? What does that tell us about how investors are feeling?
Yeah, that's where it gets a bit more nuanced, isn't it? The stock did slip about 0.5% in regular trading and then dropped another, 1.28% after hours. Closed around $126.27.
Right.
Now, some technical analysis, specifically from Investing Pro, was pointing towards overbought conditions.
Oh, okay.
Which, often triggers what they call profit taking. Basically, investors who've seen the stock run up decide to sell and lock in their gains.
Makes sense after a big climb.
It does. And it was interesting because the wider tech market was pretty stable around that time. But here's something else for you. The stock's PEG ratio.
Okay, price earnings to growth.
Exactly. It was a 0.14. Now, that low number often suggests potential undervaluation relative to its growth prospects. It hints the growth might be faster than the current price reflects.
So maybe a buying opportunity, depending on your outlook.
Potentially. But, despite the strong numbers, the price did stay below its 52-week high, which was up over $144. So it reflects maybe some cautious sentiment out there among investors.
Okay, so looking bigger picture, what's really driving Micron's performance? Their own execs seem to be pointing straight at AI, right?
Oh, absolutely. They're very clear on that. The CEO, Sanjay Mehrotra, he put it, let me quote him, "As AI drives unprecedented demand for high-performance memory and storage, Micron is exceptionally well-positioned to capitalize on this transformative era."
Transformative era, strong words.
Very.
Okay.
And the CFO, Mark Murphy, echoed that. He said they have a generational tech transition opportunity in front of us that Micron is exceptionally well-positioned for.
So they really see this AI wave as fundamental.
Completely. And not just a trend, but something reshaping the whole memory and storage game. And they see themselves right at the heart of it.
And what's really standing out here is their position in high bandwidth memory HBM. That seems crucial to their AI strategy. Tell us about HBM and how it's boosting their growth.
You nail it. HBM is key. Their DRAM revenue hit a new record, and that was largely, quote, driven by a nearly 50% sequential growth in HBM revenue.
Nearly 50% quarter over quarter. That's huge.
It's massive growth. And they're also still the sole supplier in volume production of LPDRAM in the data center.
Nope.
That's the low power stuff. Really important for energy efficiency in those huge server farms.
Yep.
Now, for HBM specifically, Micron expects to get its market share up to match its overall DRAM share sometime in the second half of calendar 2025. Maybe even sooner than they thought, because they say their execution has been very, very strong.
So they're gaining ground fast.
Seems like it. Right now, they're shipping HBM in high volume to 4 customers, and that covers both GPU and ASIC platforms, the 2 main types of AI chips.
Gotcha.
And the market itself. The total addressable market, or TAM, for HBM, it's projected to jump from about $18 billion now to $35 billion by calendar year 2025.
Doubling almost.
Pretty much. It signals this huge shift where high-performance memory is becoming critical. And looking even further out, HBM demand growth in 2026 is expected to way outpace the growth of the overall DRAM market.
Wow, and their tech. What makes their HBM special?
Good question. So their next-gen HBM, HBM4, uses their established 1-beta DRAM tech, but also an advanced logic die they developed and make themselves.
Okay, in-house logic too.
Right. And what that means for performance is bandwidth over 2 terabytes per second per stack.
2 terabytes a second.
Per second, which is over 60% higher performance than the last generation. And crucially for data centers, 20% lower power consumption.
Better performance and less power. That's the sweet spot.
Exactly. It lets AI models chew through massive data sets way more efficiently, right on the chip. That speed, that 2 terabytes per second, it directly means faster, more powerful AI that doesn't need as much energy.
And is this HBM4 out yet?
They've shipped samples to multiple customers already, so it's in the hands of partners for testing. Volume production is slated for calendar 2026, but get this, their current HBM products. Totally sold out for 2025.
Sold out already, wow.
Yeah, and the trade ratio for HBM4, it's expected to be greater than 3. It means roughly, for every dollar they make selling standard DRAM, they expect to make more than $3 selling this advanced HBM4. Shows you how valuable and in demand it is.
Okay, so connecting this back, Micron isn't just making these advanced chips, they're also making these huge investments globally, building the actual factories, right? Tell us about those plans.
Oh, the scale of investment is staggering. It's a massive bet on the future. They've announced plans to invest around $200 billion in the U.S. alone.
$200 billion.
Over the next 20 years plus. And that splits into $150 billion for manufacturing, $50 billion for R&D.
Okay.
This involves building a second big leading-edge fab in Boise, Idaho, they call it ID2, plus expanding and upgrading their existing place in Manassas, Virginia, and bringing advanced packaging work back to the U.S.
So domestic production is a huge focus.
Definitely. The first Idaho fab, ID1, should start putting out DRAM wafers in the second half of 2027. ID2 will actually start production before their planned New York fabs.
Right, they have New York plans too.
Big ones. Upstate in Clay, New York, they're planning up to 4 fabs over that same 20-plus year time frame. Ground prep starts later this year.
4 fabs. And this must be tied into the CHIPS Act funding.
Absolutely. They've secured agreements for up to $6.1 billion in direct funding for the Idaho and New York projects, plus another $275 million for the Virginia expansion. So that's potentially $6.4 billion in CHIPS Act grants.
That's serious government backing.
It is. And on top of the grants, they also get that 25% investment tax credit for building semiconductor facilities in the U.S. Plus, New York State is kicking in up to $5.5 billion in incentives.
Wow. It's a massive public-private push.
Truly. But it's not just the U.S. They're expanding globally, too. More clean room space in Hiroshima, Japan, getting EUV tools there. Expanding in Taiwan for DRAM and HBM. Expanding assembly and test in Xi'an, China, and also in Gujarat, India.
Spreading the footprint.
Yeah, and they even broke ground on a dedicated HBM advanced packaging facility down in Singapore back in January. That's targeting production starting in calendar 2027. So, yeah, it's a very global, very ambitious strategy.
Okay, so beyond the big AI focus and these huge investments, what else is going on, like in their NAND business? And what's the outlook for, say, PCs and smartphones?
Right, good question. On the NAND side, they actually hit a new quarterly record for market share in both data center SSDs and client SSDs in the first calendar quarter.
A record share.
Yep. And for the first time ever, they became the #2 brand by share in data center SSDs in Q1. That's a big competitive win for them.
Definitely.
They've also rolled out a new SSD based on their 2 terabit QLC NAND. It has this proprietary tech called adaptive write technology.
Okay, what does that do?
It basically makes write speeds 4 times faster. So it makes these denser, usually slower QLC drives perform much closer to the more expensive TLC drives for most everyday consumer tasks. Opens up the market for cheaper, high-capacity SSDs.
Making faster storage more accessible.
Yeah.
Got it. And the wider market. PCs, phones.
Okay, outlook for calendar 25. The server market, they see growing mid-single digits in units, mostly driven by huge growth in AI servers, as you'd expect. PCs expected to grow low single digits. The drivers there are more AI-capable PCs hitting the market and that Windows 11 upgrade cycle kicking in.
Yeah, modest PC growth.
Yeah. Smartphones, also low single-digit unit growth expected, but AI is driving more memory content per phone. They expect more phones launching with 12 gigs of RAM or more compared to the 8 gigs that's kind of average today.
More memory in our pockets.
Pretty much. And then in automotive, industrial, embedded stuff, they see more advanced driver assist features, AI in car infotainment systems, all driving demand for more memory and storage there too.
Makes sense.
Overall, for the industry in CY25, they're forecasting DRAM bit demand growth in the high teens percentage range. For NAND, low double digits.
Yeah.
But here's an important point. Micron expects its own supply growth for non-HBM DRAM and NAND to be below that industry demand growth.
So supply might stay tight. Good for pricing.
That's the implication, yeah. Suggests a potentially tighter market. And related to that, customer inventories are apparently pretty healthy overall. Not much sign of people panic buying ahead of tariffs or anything like that.
Okay.
One last product note. They did send out end-of-life notices for older D4 and LP4 memory types in the big volume segments, mobile, client, data center. Final shipments are ending in the next 2 or 3 quarters.
Okay. Phasing out older tech.
Right. But they stress they will keep supporting customers in longevity markets, think automotive, industrial, defense, for several years. But in the short term, those high-volume customers are already seeing shortages of D4. Micron's actually putting D4 on allocation now.
Meaning they're rationing supply.
Exactly, deciding who gets what. And they hinted LP4 shortages might increase too. So yeah, definitely gives them more pricing power on that older stuff as well.
Okay, this brings up a key question. With all these huge investment plans, the market shifts. How solid is Micron's financial position to actually fund all this innovation and stay competitive?
That's crucial, isn't it? And the answer seems to be pretty solid. Their current ratio is 3.13, which indicates really healthy liquidity. They have cash on hand to cover short-term debts easily. And they generated over $1.9 billion in free cash flow in the quarter. That's their highest in 6 years.
Wow, strong cash generation.
Very strong. They ended the quarter with a record $12.2 billion in cash and investments on the books.
Okay, quite a war chest.
It is. They also did some refinancing, pushed out about $900 million in debt that was due in 2027, replacing it with about $1.7 billion in new notes that mature way out in 2033 and 2035. Gives them more breathing room.
Smart move. And spending plans.
Their capital spending plan for fiscal 2025 is holding steady at around $14 billion. No change there. And the vast majority of that CapEx, it's going towards HBM production, building those new facilities we talked about, back-end manufacturing and R&D.
So focused investment.
Very focused. And they expect to end this fiscal year, 2025, with tight DRAM inventories and significantly reduced NAND inventories, which, again, points towards that healthier supply-demand balance favoring them.
It really does sound like a company firing on, well, many cylinders and shaping the future of memory. But, every deep dive have to look at the potential bumps in the road. What are the big risks? The challenges Micron's facing? Legal issues, geopolitics.
Yeah, you're right. It's not all smooth sailing. There are definitely significant headwinds. Legally, on the intellectual property front, Micron is involved in multiple patent infringement lawsuits.
They're on who?
Companies like Netlist, Bisang Inc., YMTC, which is a competitor, and Palisade Technologies. And these lawsuits aren't minor. They cover, quote, substantially all of our DRAM, NAND, and other memory and storage products.
Cool. Basically their entire business.
Essentially, yes. Covering products that account for substantially all their revenue. One specific case with Netlist resulted in a jury saying Micron should pay over $400 million.
Ouch.
Big number. Now, Micron says it expects to appeal the verdict. And importantly, the Patent Trial and Appeal Board, the PTAB, at the U.S. Patent Office actually issued decisions, finding both patents, in that case, unpatentable.
So the patents themselves might be invalid.
That's Micron's argument, yes, though Netlist is appealing those PT rulings. So it's complex and ongoing.
Okay. What else on the legal front?
Well, they're also facing a securities class action lawsuit and some shareholder derivative complaints. These allege the company made materially false or misleading statements about supply and demand in the industry and demand for their own products.
Right. And anything with China?
There's an ongoing antitrust investigation by China's market regulator, SAMR, and separately, YMTC, that Chinese competitor, has filed a complaint against Micron, alleging things like false advertising and unfair competition related to NAND-based products. So, yeah, the legal landscape is pretty active.
Definitely sounds like it. And geopolitically, China comes up again there, I imagine.
Sure does. That May 2023 decision by China's Cyberspace Administration, the CSHI, it determined that operators of critical information infrastructure in China aren't allowed to buy Micron products.
And that hurt sales.
Directly impacted revenue from mainland China and Hong Kong, yes. And then there are just the general geopolitical and other risks that come with operating internationally. Things like potential sales restrictions, tariffs, IP theft risk, political instability.
Standard risks for a global company, but maybe heightened now.
Arguably, yes. They specifically call out potential issues in Taiwan, noting that a majority of our DRAM production output in 2024 came from their fabs there. Any instability could really disrupt things.
That's a huge concentration.
It is. They also mentioned the risk from new and increasing export restrictions, trade barriers, tariffs, including rules related to AI. These could limit future sales to China or elsewhere or make it harder to get needed equipment or materials.
Speaking of materials and equipment, any supply chain risks there?
Yes, that's another area. They rely on a limited number of suppliers, sometimes even a single or sole source for critical things.
Like,
Things like rare earth elements, which often come primarily from China, or key equipment like advanced photolithography machines. Any disruption with those few suppliers could cause major problems.
like bottlenecks.
Exactly. And then there are evolving environmental and safety regulations. Things like new rules around PFAS chemicals, sometimes called forever chemicals. Complying with those, or even just facing material and labor shortages for their massive construction projects, could lead to increased costs or delays.
Okay. And any risks specific to the AI boom itself?
Well, yes. While AI is driving huge demand now, they acknowledge the long-term trajectory is unknown and associated demand may fluctuate. It might not be a straight line up forever.
Good point.
There's also the risk for any company using AI heavily of their own AI algorithms being flawed or using biased data. That could lead to legal liability or just damage their reputation. Plus, the laws and regulations around AI itself are still being written, basically. That creates uncertainty.
So a lot to navigate there. We've really covered a lot, how Micron's riding this huge AI wave, investing billions to build out their manufacturing, dealing with tricky market dynamics, and juggling all these legal and geopolitical risks simultaneously. It's quite a complex picture.
It really is. And what's quite fascinating, I think, is how this one company's story kind of shows you everything happening in tech right now. You see the incredible speed of innovation, the really high stakes in global competition, and this complex web of politics and economics shaping the whole industry. It highlights the sheer scale involved in building and maintaining the infrastructure our digital world runs on.
Absolutely. So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to consider. As AI keeps changing, well, pretty much everything from data centers to the phones in our pockets. What role do you think these fundamental building blocks, memory and storage, will play in shaping the ethics and the economics of our future? Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.